And the secret to success at my last company, Visalis, when I scaled it from, I bought the company, it was doing $20,000 a month in sales, and I scaled to $65 million a month in sales. And I got to $65 million a month because of systems, right? Because I was obsessed about building systems. And I didn't build sales teams, I built systems to operate sales teams. I didn't build marketing, I built systems to operate marketing. I didn't build product, I built systems that built product, right? Everything was about the systems that I was building, and then the engineering of those systems, and then how I tied those systems together, and then my relentless pursuit of fine-tuning and testing and developing the systems. And I'm doing that here today at AlterCall, and you are early adopters of this system that I'm actively building right now, and I thank you for it, and I'm very grateful for it, because you're a part of a brand new system that we've just kicked off, and I'm super grateful that you guys have taken your valuable time to dive into this system, so thank you. You can give yourselves another round of applause. Thank you. So I'm going to give you a couple frameworks. You're going to hear me talk about them over and over, but I just want to start with these frameworks so that way we can contextualize any of your questions within these frameworks and think about how we operate. And I just want to start with principles around thinking, speaking, and acting as framework number one. Now, a lot of you are here for an upgrade, and I know a lot of us at this level were like, oh, I don't need to work on my thinking, but it is actually your thinking that needs to be upgraded for you to really start building systems that say operate at 10 million a month or 20 million a month or whatever it is that your objectives are. So thinking is extremely important. Speaking is very important as well. As you think, so you speak, and as you speak, so you act. So these are just the fundamental frameworks that I always contextualize everything into. In the age of AI, we all want a lot more action, true or false? We want more precise action. We want more quality of action. We want more volume of action. We want more action, right? And the theme of this event is scale with AI, but we all want more action. Now, every company on the planet is about to go through a radical transformation. It is going to be out of this world, literally, the type of transformation we're going through. I have the privilege of working in a number of different companies. So I work with companies that are doing robotics right now. I work with companies that are doing AI. I work with companies that are pioneering space. I work with companies that are in consumer products and manufacturing. And I'm seeing patterns across many different industries and many different companies and many different verticals. And I can tell you that everyone is signed up for this idea that AI is going to transform our businesses. And the next framework that I want to share with you is around how we structure our organizations, which number one is people, structure, process. Now, I introduced thinking, speaking, and acting. You guys may have heard me say this 1,000 times, but I just have to start with that. Now I want to get into some of the more scalable aspects of building a business. Every company I look at, many people give me this, they say, well, have you ever worked in my industry? And I equate it to the fact that I've been an entrepreneur now, and I've been obsessed about building companies for 27 years. I've read every article you could imagine on it, books upon books upon books. I've met multi-billionaires. The founder of Microsoft was a mentor of mine, Paul Allen. Dan Gilbert of Quicken Loans and Rocket Mortgage fame is a mentor of mine. And Tony Hsieh, the late founder of Zappos. And the list goes on and on. And I only share these names with you not to be like, oh, big deal. It's just God has sent me some brilliant human beings that I could study and that I could observe and I could try to understand how they obtain the level of greatness that they have and what is it about them that makes them special. And then also, importantly, what is it about their cultures and their companies that are able to become number one in their category or get the type of results that, that say a Rocket Mortgage is able to get? And what was it specifically that made that work the way it did? And I've identified everything as under these three categories. So number one, you have your people category. And when we talk about people, we're talking about the values of our people. We're talking about the intelligence of our people. We're talking about the work ethic of our people. We're talking about the communication of our people. We're talking about the practices that our people have, whether our people are mercenaries or missionaries. Like there's a lot in this people category. In fact, if many entrepreneurs, like I used to talk to big CFOs of publicly traded companies, and I'd show them that at one point I had 4,900 full-time salespeople. And one of these bean counters told me, it's like, Ryan, you can make a lot of money if you just got rid of all those people. It's like, well, no, those people are the ones that actually generate the money, right? But from an analytical mind and from a financial mind, those people are like the biggest problem with companies. Like if we could just run the company and generate the same revenue with no people, we would all be, much more wealthy and successful, right? The people is the hard part, but with AI coming our way, we're going to have a total leveling up and upgrading of people, right? Human potential is going to be tapped in ways that you can't even imagine, and we're on the forefront of some of the things that are happening right now in terms of tapping into human potential, but AI is going to unlock people in new ways. And I'm here to tell you, it's not going to be doom and gloom. The greatest people out there are going to select to work with great companies. They're going to have choices, right? So we want to build our people structures. That means our culture. That means our recruiting, our training, our onboarding, our development, right? We want to build our people capacity as professionals. So when you're thinking about some of the things that I'm sharing with you, and I want you to ask yourself, am I running my recruiting right now like a hobby? Meaning I do it sometimes, right? Like, I don't know, if the weather's nice, I recruit. Or am I running it professionally? Meaning I'm recruiting all the time, right? Do you understand the difference between a hobby in the Department of People and actually running it as a process? Who wants to be vulnerable? Who right now is running their people practices like a hobby? A couple of you. And the rest of you are just got it all figured out? That was a test, by the way. All right, so since you have it all figured out, sir, why don't you know it? All right, so on the people side of it right now, let's all be honest with each other. Who's running it like a hobby? Who's running it like a professional? Hobby? Hobbyist? All right. Now, do me a favor, take out your notebook and take some notes, because you should be walking away from here with a long list of things that you're committed to changing about the way you think about business and the way you're acting within your business. I've not done my job if you guys are just sitting here with your arms crossed, falling asleep on me with your eyes open. So take out your notebooks. Let's take some notes. How many of you have 10 employees on your company or more? 10 employees, 10 or more. How many have 20 or more? Keep your hand up if you have 50 or more. 50. How many of you have like 100 or more? Okay. One trick that I use on the people side is I write down A, B, and C next to each person in my org. A, these are people I would start over with tomorrow. These are people that I would start a new company with tomorrow. Like, we can go do anything. Me, Anthony, Brian, this founding team here, it's like we can go do anything. I love this team, and A's are the people that I go to war with 7 days a week. B's are the people that I might not start over a brand new company with, maybe, but I definitely start this company with them. Or B's might be people that have the potential to go to A. There's just something off. They're just not showing up. They're not working as hard as they could be. They're not asking for help. They're not seeking clarity. They're not growing and learning. They're not showing evidence of increasing their ability to learn. And then C's are the people that maybe they could go to B, but they'll never go to A. You guys follow me on this? And a C is somebody who maybe they're brand new and they haven't yet got to their ROI potential. And one of the ways that I want you to start thinking here is I want you to start thinking with ROI in mind, return on investment. Every hire that I make, everything that I do, I have an ROI calculation on. Now, I don't always get there. I'm not perfect at this, but I make my hires based on an assumed ROI. So, for example, one of the companies I'm supporting, we're hiring a CIO, and the CIO wants a lot of money, a huge salary. And I said, well, in the hiring process, I want him to show how he will reduce the total expenses by more than his salary within the first 90 days. So he's paying for himself, right? And I said, and if he doesn't come in with that plan, well, then he's going to come in and he's going to increase expenses, and he's going to try to keep everybody on his team as opposed to replace them, because that's easier to do than it is to actually come in and cut costs and reorganize teams and save money, right? So when you're hiring a person that's an A player, they'd hear that task and they'd say, I'll go make my weight in gold here. Let's do that, right? That's an A player. A B player will say, I can't commit to that, right? And then a C player is just going to cost you a lot more. So a C player is a person who hasn't yet made their ROI thesis with me. Like, I cannot see a clear return on investment in this individual. A B player might be ROI accretive, but they're not a 10x person. Maybe they're a 2x. And then an A player is like an ROI 10x. Meaning every dollar I pay them in salary, I'm getting 10 times out of it. How many of you think about the people you have on your team? Think about the people, and I know that we're all very spiritual here, but you have to forgive me. I have this principle called the path is math. So I try to reverse engineer everything and find the math behind it, so that way I can make decisions flying on instruments as opposed to trying to wing it. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? So this is how I reverse engineer things, as I think about ROI in every element of everything that I'm doing. What is the return on investment? And an A player is going to give you a 10x. Now, A players are going to represent a certain portion of the company. One woman I'm mentoring now, she's not with us today, has about 360 employees. When we ran this analysis, we had the managers rate each player with the guidance that I've just shared with you. And something like 80% of her company was in the B and C category, and only a small percentage were in the A category. Now, you're not going to have 100% A's, because A players tend to be type A personalities. They can be a little bit like divas. Sometimes they're strange. Sometimes they dress strange. They're hyper-competitive. They're hyper-critical of themselves and of others. They despise being on teams with B players. The fastest way to get rid of an A player is put them on a team with a bunch of B players. Right? They'll just be like, I can't work here. I can't be a part of this. Okay? And you want to really kill an A player, put them on a team of C players. For those of you that ever played sports, anybody ever play basketball in the house, tall people? Okay, you're 6'7", you could probably hoop, right? If I put you on a basketball team with a bunch of people who can't hoop, that can't pass, that can't play, you'd probably get injured. It'd probably be very frustrating, and you'd probably not want to play the game, right? I don't like playing basketball with people who can't play basketball, right? I get injured all the time. Like, they step on your shoe, or they run into you when you're trying to score. It's painful when you're on a team with people who can't play. I want to be on a team of people who can actually play better than me. Do you guys ever play basketball or a sport with people that are just way better than you? And you're like, wow, I gotta level up. I gotta play harder. I gotta practice more. I gotta be more switched on. I gotta pass better. I'm not gonna make these mistakes because these people are playing at this high level. I played basketball with these brothers named the Marcaccini brothers. They're from Italy. And they were world champions in Italy, and they were brilliant fundamentalists. Like, these guys could score, pass, shoot. They spoke in Italian. They'd make fun of everybody on the court, and we would just score nonstop, and we'd beat everybody when I was on the team with the Marcaccini brothers. It was exhilarating. I was the worst player on the team. The only thing that I did on that team is I got offensive rebounds. When the rare time that they missed, I was up there fighting for that rebound, getting them the ball back so they could keep scoring, right? That was my role. I did nothing but offensive rebounds, and they loved me because I didn't want to shoot. I just wanted to get them the ball so they could. Do you guys understand? So when you play on an A player, when you're an A player on an A player team, you know your role, and you own your role. My role was offensive rebounds on that team. It wasn't shooting. Those guys could shoot. You ever see the Europeans drain threes? Like, these guys could shoot. So write that down. When you're on an A player team, you own your role. In order to own your role, you have to know your role. And an A player team is going to inspire you to perform at an even higher level. And this is what we try to do at AlterCall in our own internal team. So I share with you everything that I'm teaching you here today, we're implementing in our own companies, and as well as the thousands of employees that we serve by way of the other companies that we support on our higher level programs, right? I told you the truth that an A player hates being on a B player team. But I'm gonna give you a hard truth. This one might not be easy. What do you think an A player feels like when they have a B player entrepreneur that they're working for. It's like, you imagine you're an A player, you want to excel your career, you want to do innovative things, you want to make an impact, you want to demonstrate excellence, you want to play at the best level that you possibly can with the God-given time that you're permitted to have, right? And the entrepreneur that you're supporting acts like a B. Doesn't get back to you, doesn't respond to your text messages, doesn't communicate, doesn't resolve conflict, doesn't participate in the systems and structures and that everyone else does, right? Can you imagine what it's like when an A player goes to work for a B-level entrepreneur, right? That A player is out very quickly. Now, I share that with you because the invitation is for each of us to say, I'm going to go to A, right? Because I want an A player team, that means I have to be an A player, because A players will not want to work for me, even though I'm the one writing the check. They'll be demoralized, devalued, and they won't get me a 10x ROI if I'm the problem in the company because I'm the B player on the team with the A players. Does that make sense? A lot of entrepreneurs, we think just because we're the one writing the check, that makes us default A players. That's not the case. In fact, I know many entrepreneurs that have, that operate at the C level, and they got teams of, Bs and maybe a couple As. And I'm like, you are the problem. You are the pattern. You are the reason why your company is not achieving the results that it could, because you haven't accepted the invitation that you need to act like an A player. And oftentimes that's because of ego, because we think, oh, it's my company. I don't need to be an A player. I don't need to play by the rules and run the system that everybody else is running, right? So I give you that framework because I really want you to ask yourself, am I an A player right now? And if you come to the conclusion that you're not, because you're running certain areas of your business like a hobby, that's great, because like we talked about at lunch, we're going to upgrade, right? You could walk away here and say, I'm running my recruiting like a hobby, and I'm going to now run it like a professional. I'm running my marketing like a hobby, I'm going to run it like a professional. I'm running my sales like a hobby, I'm going to run it like a professional. I'm running my international expansion like a hobby, I'm running my supply chain like a hobby, I'm running my IT like a hobby, I'm going to run it like a professional, and I'm going to insist that I lead the way in what it means to play at the A level, and I'm going to bring as many people with me to this new level of excellence that I'm going to bring to my organization. You guys clear on that? 10x ROI on your A players. Now, another thing entrepreneurs tell me, which is fascinating, is they say, well, I can't afford to hire an A player. Have any of you ever had that kind of thinking? I can't afford to hire an A player. But as an investor, if you get a 10x ROI on it, well, you can afford to hire the A player, right? Right? Now, the reason why we don't write the check is oftentimes, why? What's that? Fear. Fear. We haven't really done the ROI analysis correctly, right? We haven't done the planning maybe, like really planned it out, how this person is going to get onboarded, how this person is going to show up, what projects, what initiatives, how are they going to make an impact, how are they prioritized, how am I going to engage with them on a daily basis? So I might hire the person and not get the ROI, right? That's one scenario. That happens often. Because if we knew we were going to get a 10x ROI, we'd hire right away, wouldn't we? I mean, if you knew that as an investor, that you give this person $500,000 a year and you're going to get back $5 million, would you not make that trade? We don't have any investors in the room in the house. As an investor, if any of you want to give me $5 million, I have $500,000 in exchange. But it's because we haven't done the planning, we haven't done the analysis. Now the next part is structure, which is another very important aspect to building an organization. Now, structure is how you organize them, how you compensate them. The management practices, which is organization, your meeting structures, how you run meetings, how you conduct meetings, how you do your one-on-ones, how you're growing and develop, or sorry, that's on the people side, but how you actually structure your organization, how you organize, and how you compensate, and who reports to who, for example, right? So, do you have one of your A players reporting to one of your B players? How are you structuring this organization? Is it a flat organization where everyone has 10 direct reports each, or is it a hierarchical organization where everybody has 3 direct reports each? This is organizational theory and management structure that you have to become great at. I've read many books on this and many different deep dives into this particular subject on compensation, organization, structure, management theory, compensation. This is one of the most important aspects that you got to get right, because even if you have A players, if they're in a B structure, right, they're not going to create a process. And in order to have an effective company that is exemplifying excellence, we need A players in A structure creating a process. Because after that, you have products. Sorry, after that, you have projects. You have programs. And you have products. And on your projects, programs, and products, projects are the teams that are launching things, that are building new products, that are launching the new website, creating the new AI software, that are building the new platform. These are your projects, right? Opening up the new manufacturing plant, expanding to the next country, figuring out the best tax strategy. Anything that takes multiple people and many hours is a project, right? So, you have to have A people in an A structure, creating A process, running A projects, running A-level programs and A-level products. And if you can get to that, you will have a company that scales to number one in whatever your marketplace segment is, right? It's that easy, right? You guys got the formula. You're all billionaires now. Just thank me later. Just send the donations. Nelson, you have a question? How would you define program? So this is a great question. A project, generally speaking, is, for example, if we're going to launch a product. Let's say we're going to name a product. Name a product. Give me a product. What? Learn what? Learn Collects. Yeah, Learn Collects. What is that? That's the new product that we're launching. Oh, the new product. All right. What kind of product is that?
It's a TED company for nurses that are taking the test.
Okay, a testing company. Got it. Yeah. All right, so we're going to launch so the project is to launch this new product. Once the product is launched, it becomes a program. The product has to actually have maintenance and be maintained as a program. The people that are launching products generally are not the ones running the programs. So for example, we have an AI product that we're going to unveil this weekend. Once that is launched, there'll be a team that maintains that, and there'll be another team that's building the next version of that, which is a project. So, for example, a project might be setting up a new market, and you got to get a new office, and you got to hire an office manager, and you got to figure out what market to go to. That's a project, and the program would be the ongoing running of that market, making sure that that market is continuing to receive the type of attention that is necessary. So, for example, in a roofing company that we're supporting, the project is open up the new market, and once the market's open, it turns into a program, and then it's ran and governed like a program. Programs run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're always running. There's a lot of maintenance involved in the running of a program, versus a project tends to be a burst of energy that sets it up, it gets it off the ground. Generally, the team that's really good at projects is terrible at programs because they don't love the monotony of doing the exact same thing day in and day out. And one of the big mistakes that we make is we have our project people trying to run our programs, and then we never actually get our project people launching new initiatives because they get bogged down by the programs. So for example, let's say you have a widget that's selling 10,000 a day, and customers are complaining, and the widget needs to be upgraded, and you need to figure out supply chain. Then all the project capacity moves to running this program, and you're no longer initiating new projects in the company. And new projects are what tend to be the things that are going to drive new value. But you have to obviously keep your programs running. And then obviously we all know about products, but this is the way I look at every company. I say, I want to know about your people. When we do acquisitions, and I'm involved in a lot of acquisitions, buying companies, selling companies, advising on the buy and sell of companies, I go, you want to know a secret? Before the acquisition, I have instructed many people to interview every human being and tell me who A, B, and C are. And the day of the acquisition closing, you let go of the C's and the B's to whatever degree necessary. So that way you start fresh with your people as opposed to dragging people that aren't going to be a part of the new vision that you're building. So we get into personality profiling. We get into looking at their language. we get into just evaluating every detail about the people. And that way we know exactly who we want to keep the day after the acquisition closes. And then we obviously do our structuring. We look at process, we look at the projects. Now this might look like in a larger company, you actually have an office running project management office. Your program management is going to be just ongoing, individuals, small pods generally running. And then your product department will be, your product managers or people that are running those specific product lines. That make sense? Yes.
Question. So, how is the function between the people and the structure? So, I mean, are the A people shapes the structure, or we have to create the structure and define A people who run the structure?
Yeah. A players are not always great at creating the structure because they're, oftentimes overachievers. So you have to create the structure. The structure of the organization is extremely important to the culture that you're building. For example, some management philosophy might say you have to have 20 direct reports, right? They want their managers to be super busy, having no time to actually do anything. Now, in another management philosophy, they say they want their managers to be total doers, meaning very few direct reports, and we want our managers to be doers. So it just depends on the culture that you're trying to create. You have to set out the mandate for how you're going to organize your group of people, and then you want to make sure that you're structuring the workflows, structuring the reporting lines, and the communication lines, and across your different divisions or departments. And so this is very important that you're in charge of building a structure. You don't want to hand it off to the people. It's like letting the inmates run the asylum, right? Right? Because they'll design a structure that maybe is most conducive for their personal interests, but not necessarily for the whole. That's a good thing that we've stumbled upon here. One of the biggest issues with compensation is we, of course, as entrepreneurs, want everybody to be compensated like us, right? Off of profits, because that's how we're compensated, right? We're compensated off of profit. But not everybody has a direct ability to contribute to profit in the same way. So you have to have different compensation structures. Some people are targeting top line, some people are targeting quality, and you have to do the math on this to make sure that how you structured this is going to get you to the profitability that you're looking for, right? So this is also how you structure. So for example, we have our coaching organization, and we have, in my company, AlterCall, we have our enrollment organization, right? Our enrollment gets compensated on enrolling. Our coaching organization is not compensated on enrolling. They're compensated on retaining, and they're compensated on quality, right? Because, it's the coaching relationships that you're going to continue to reinvest in year after year after year, right? Not necessarily the enrollment relationship. That's the first touch point, but then it goes into coaching, and our coaches have a different kind of compensation than our enrollment people, right? So I'm constantly engineering structure, engineering compensation across the different places, making sure that as we engineer it, the company meets its objectives. So hopefully that answered your question. Yes.
I have one more question. When you have several projects, let's say that you have 3 projects, they become a program. Do you recommend that those programs are ran under the same umbrella, like HR, payroll, marketing, to control all projects under just one organization? Ideally, or to keep them separate, build in a team of each department, all the departments in one company, and so on, or just integrate it all into one?
Project managers are one of my favorite people to hire. They're one of my favorite hires. I'd rather hire a project manager than an assistant, right? Because I'm a firm believer that, as entrepreneurs, we're running so many projects. We need people to help us manage these projects, right? So I love project managers. I love project management roles. I love getting projects done in an organized, efficient, and hyper expedient way. So the question was, do you centralize project management or do you decentralize it?
Programs. Once they become a program, do you centralize them or decentralize them?
I just have program managers. So depending on, let's say if you had, and you might have my educational content program manager for this program, another program manager for this. Programs are also very conducive to, say, services versus products, right? So oftentimes services are ran more as a program rather than ran as a project. Yeah. But when you get into a larger company, like for example, one of the groups, I don't know if any of their team members here, so I won't name the name, they're opening up these massive manufacturing plants, and they're part of this community. And they have hundreds of thousands of square feet that they're opening. And they decentralized the project, and they had local people set up each of these manufacturing. And they're not getting the efficiencies that they did at their home manufacturing plant as they've scaled. And the reason why is because they decentralized the intellectual capital, and they tried to spread it out across multiple places, as opposed to having a central team that identifies the locations, builds the plants, opens up the plants, and then moves on to the next plant and hands it over to a program manager, right? So we've reorganized that company, restructured it to create their new plants and that operation that opens up new plants as a project team that identifies and opens up the new locations. And then once the location's opened up, they hand it over to a person to run it. I know this is some advanced stuff, but hopefully this is helpful, yes.
You say that a project manager is your favorite person to hire, really stood out to me. How do you,
One of my favorites.
how do you personally, if you one-to-one work with that project manager?
What do you mean?
How do you,
I call them every day, 25 times a day.
that's a great example, but how are you working with them through them to get what you done, but have that impact multiply?
Yeah, you know, I'm pretty hands-on. I'm calling people, working with them, trying to, but you know, we all have a certain amount of relationships that we can manage actively. So I put to the front burner the ones that are working on the highest value creation, and then I have to put to the back burner the ones that are lower value creation. And the way that looks like is, I might be working with a person 3-4 times a week if you know we're front burner, and I might be working with them you know once a week or every 2 weeks or once a month if they're more on my back burner. Now that doesn't mean that they're not a high value person. If a person running a program that's doing $1 million a year in sales, they're a high value person. They're just running the program. It's running great. I can sync with them once a month. I use a formula, and this is good for you to hear, 10, 80, 10, and I got this from John Maxwell. For the first 10% of a project, I'm 100% involved, like really highly involved. For the 80% of the project, I'm touching in all the time, making sure the project's on course, checking in. And the last 10%, when it comes to the launch of the project, I'm heavily involved. Like 100%, I want to be a part of every aspect of the launch of it. And I use that framework. So the first 10%, I'm kicking off, I'm initiating, I'm part of the project management, I'm going over the Gantt charts or whatever the project management information is. I'm identifying the ROI. I'm heavily involved for the first 10% of the project. And then it goes into its development cycle. I'm touching base with that. I don't like check out, because then I'll show up to the last 10% and I'll be very unhappy with what I got. But I'm less intense. And then at the very end, it's intense. I want to be in part of every little detail to the highest degree that I can. Other questions? We got about 10 more minutes. Yes, sir.
As an entrepreneur, do you ever delegate your structure function?
Meaning like hire a management consultant or something like that? No. Before we had all these like industrial ideas, imagine we were in ancient times, biblical times, 5,000, 3,000 years ago. And we had a group of people and we made a livelihood by doing X, right? We would get together, all of us in this room, and we would organize actively, routinely. We would talk about the problems that we have. We'd process, we'd move quickly, right? We're just a group of people that's organized to create some value in the marketplace. And a lot of times we listen to these management philosophers, or we bring in these consultants. They tell us, you need to structure it this way. And it's very problematic. Like, we have to optimize it for the culture we're building, for the products that we're building, and you have to be the architect of that. You cannot defer that or outsource that. In fact, I will tell you, these are great questions. You can't outsource any practice area in your business. A lot of times entrepreneurs are like, oh, I want sales. I'll just hire a sales manager from a large competition, pay him $500,000 a year, and then I'll get sales. And 6 months later, they're having to fire the person, and they still don't have the sales, right? You guys are laughing because some of you have made that mistake. It's like, oh, I'll just go get the smart guy that works for my competition. And that doesn't work. You have to be actively structuring, actively thinking about your structure, so much so that I bring with me a document that shows me all my economics and numbers, and I have every month on a single piece of paper, and I study the multiple months every single month, and I'm constantly thinking about my structure. You have to become architects. In order to really architect a business that scales, you have to be the chief architect, and that's structuring, right? Yes?
Ryan, do you have any tips for hiring managers how to discern between an A, B, and C hire when bringing someone onto the team?
Discernment is a spiritual gift, and I've come to learn that, okay? I don't have all the gifts. I only got a couple. I've got discernment, and I've earned that gift by way of making many millions of dollars worth of errors and mistakes. I've got some wisdom by way of the many millions of dollars worth of errors and mistakes, and I have the ability to govern, which is structuring, and this is the gift of governance and of, say, administration that we're talking about. But how do I discern? I ask probing questions. I'm probing for spiritual maturity of a person. I'm probing for how far along are they in their walk, but not with judgment. One of the things that we have to, for those of us who are spiritual in the room, which all of us are, like judgment is a sin, right? We're not supposed to be judging them, but we need to discern whether or not this person embodies the fruits of the Spirit that I'm seeking to bring into my organization. And so I'm just discerning. I'm asking questions like, I want to see this person's character. I want to see where this person has some holes in their character, because I got holes, they have holes. I want to find the holes. We all have weird things that we got to work on. And God knows I got plenty of weird things to work on, right? So I'm asking probing questions, and I'm asking them questions about how did they do that? Can you explain to me specifically how you did X or did Y? When you drill down, and this is the number one question, when a person says that they did this or they did that, and you ask them how, and you want them to get to a level of specificity where you know that they know exactly how they achieved X result. And so I'm asking lots of probing questions. I'm in prayer as I'm talking to them often, saying, please show me this person's character. Show me if I'm here to develop them and mentor them, and this is an assignment for me, or is this just something that's here to sharpen my skill set of discernment? And if so, I accept the challenge, and I'll say no thank you, they're not the right person or the right fit. So I'm asking myself lots of critical questions in that. Questions like, is this person for me? Is this person have the right type of values, the right type of work ethic, the right type of skill, for me to be successful in my mentorship of them? And I say that with humility because I'm not great at mentoring everyone. Like, I'm terrible at mentoring certain types of people. Other of you would be better served as their mentor than me. And so when I'm hiring, I'm only accepting people that I believe I have a high potential of being a good mentor in their life of. If I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to work, we don't have a shared sense of humor, we don't have shared values, I can't really relate to this person to the degree that I need to, then I really want them to go find a better mentor than me for the role. Because they'll suffer if they work for me and I can't give them the growth and development that they need, right? So I'm trying to eliminate that on the front end as opposed to the back end, but I don't always get it right. And sometimes I come to that conclusion, a couple months in, and we have to part ways with compassion and gracefully. But I come to the conclusion like I'm not the best mentor for this person. So that's the way I look at that. I hope that helped.
I was just curious on the project to program, setting budgets, or when you're running a smaller company, or figuring out budgeting.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about a project, so you put in the costs in your mind, and you're running the ROIs. Okay, I think we should do this vertical. Let's say in our marketing space, we're going to go into this vertical. So now we're going to create this brand.
Yeah.
And then you launch it. So now you have to plan all the budgeting for. Now you got to keep maintaining that brand, and what's it going to cost, and so now you have people involved running that brand. How do you know? I'm just thinking in my mind, how do I plan all that's a lot of planning and a lot of budgeting for people.
Yeah.
And how do you know how many people and how much budget to put towards something like that?
Well, once again, back to ROI thinking. So that's my first principle is always ROI, right? 2 is if it starts as a project with like a 3-person team, I'm not going to, turn it into a program with a 27-person team, right? If 3 people got the thing off the ground, 2 people can keep it running, right? Or, I have some thesis, and then obviously I'll scale it up accordingly. Like once it's a program, it might need like lots of SDRs on it or lots of call center agents, but while it was still in project phase, it might not have needed that. So, I'm building an ROI. I'm looking at the revenue, the profitability that's contributing, and I'm always keeping in mind that I have a targeted margin in everything that I do. I want to have a highly profitable business, right? And if you let this slip, your profits will slip away from you. So, I'm always thinking, how do I maintain 35% profitability in everything that I do, right? Because if you don't have that as your top level thinking, your margins will erode and pretty soon you'll have like 0 profitability and your team won't care about maintaining profitability unless you've totally incented them on profitability. Do you guys follow me on that? So I'm always like, I cannot structure anything unless I maintain my margins, and I want to even advance it. So if my company's spitting out 35% on the bottom line, I want this new program to be spitting out 55 cents, because this program doesn't have to bear the burden of the overhead of all the rest of the structure, right? So I want this to be a higher margin endeavor rather than a lower margin endeavor. So that's my ROI thinking in order for me to build out the budgeting. Now, there's a concept that I recommend everyone read up on. This changed my life. I've taught Charles this. He'll share his testimony later. There's Charles. It's called zero-based budgeting. So you start every budget from zero. Like, you don't need anything. It's MVP thinking: minimum viable product, minimum viable program, minimum viable project. I want everything done at the minimum viable level. I've found that when you just start spending money and making these investments, it gets away from you. You have to be relentless, especially as things scale up, to keep that like day one culture. This is what Jeff Bezos at Amazon is so famous for, is that he insists that everybody operate day one as though they're launching new projects like they're not Amazon. They're a brand new company, a startup with a brand new project to create a product that maybe one day will become a program. And they have like 3-person, 4-person, or like he says, 1 pizza teams, 2 pizza max, right? Meaning you can feed the entire team in less than 2 pizzas, right? That's his mindset on that. So, and that's how he's kept this $1 trillion company scaling new endeavors. Is he's just kept a very new mind in the way he does it. And I work with lots of companies that are building and scaling, and oftentimes they're like, well, we're so and so, we have to spend money to do everything. And one guy is in a $200 million company, and I had to correct him on a management call because I was talking to his team, and he said, they're an affiliate-based company. They run affiliate traffic, and not you guys, but another group. And they're starting a paid media group. And he said, well, we're a $200 million company. I said, your paid media is a $2 company. Like, you guys are not a $200 million company in paid media. The affiliate people are $200 million. You guys are like $1 million company in paid media, and you guys should be acting like $1 million company in paid media until you craft that, until you get that piece, built out. Then you can start acting. Once your paid media segment is doing 200 million, you can act like a $200 million company. But they were about to start their paid media like a $200 million company should, not like a $1 million startup should. Do you guys follow me? So it's really easy to be like, well, we're 200 million. We should do a 15-person paid media team to get started. And it's like, no, your paid media group right now is like sub $1 million company. You guys should be acting like $1 million company in that group and being nimble like $1 million company and iterating, not treating this like you're a $200 million company. Was that helpful? These are some of the things I'm saying in boardrooms and war rooms and building and scaling companies, that I think will be useful to you as you're building and scaling yours. And I just share this with you because this is like chess to me. So you could put any business in front of me, and within a few conversations and hours and looking at some numbers, I can see their chessboard and I can say, okay, we need to do these 3 things to advance this chessboard. Does this make sense to you? This is how I look at the game of chess. And then your business, respectively, is going to be a unique game of chess that you're playing because you have unique products and unique people and a unique structure, and you have unique process and programs and so forth, right? So, but this is how I organize the game of chess across multiple businesses and multiple industries. Excellent? Is that useful?